All right, welcome back. Intro to Technology 1023. We're going to be talking about IoT devices for this one. It's going to be relatively short, and it's the last lecture before we start getting into the web portion of this curriculum. So, in the web portion of the curriculum, it's going to be much more hands-on, and you actually can create something. So, a lot of people tend to like that flavor of the course. So, with that, we're going to talk about IoT first. So, what is the Internet of Things? Well, from a definition standpoint, it is connecting to the internet, a device that connects to the internet. Okay, so yes, that is technically true. And a lot of people start going, well, there's this. This connects to the internet. How is that not an IoT device? Well, it is. But it misses the spirit of what we're trying to say here. We're talking about things that traditionally don't connect to the internet that connect to the internet now. I have LED strips that connect to the internet. I have light bulbs that connect to the internet. These lights that I'm using as key lights connect to the internet. Then you can have like the smart home type thing where your door knob connects to the internet, your garage door, your lights and blinds and heat and AC and everything else connects to the internet. Internet of Things. That's what we're talking about here. And this is part of the reason why in the networking presentation, we said that IPv4, we ran out of IPs very, very quickly. And this is why. Well, we have a bunch of devices that are connecting to the internet. Even the camera that I have that I'm using right now connects to the internet, has Wi-Fi on it. It's insane. Okay. Now, this creates two things. One, it creates a lot of automation possibilities. Again, back to the smart home example. Yes, we can automate how we're going to do these things. If people are actually in the room, we can have a motion detector to turn off the lights if no one's in the room, or turn on the lights when the door swings open. Something along those lines where you can automate that process where you don't actually have to have a physical switch. This is what the Internet of Things is doing, is just automation for the most part. Even your cars connect to the internet. So Internet of Things, things that connect to the internet is just everywhere. Okay. So smart homes. I already ranted on this a little bit. A few examples here: motion sensors, heat, wind, moisture. Okay. So moisture in particular is good for like basements, or if you have a server closet, having too much moisture in there is going to create condensation because of the cold air. That's going to be a problem with electronic devices. Condensation, water, electric devices, not great. So yeah, that's what IoT is trying to do. It's trying to automate whatever we're trying to monitor, instead of physically walking over and seeing what the temperature is over in the server closet. We can just automate it, send it to a web app, and then we can just monitor everything there. And a lot of these IoT devices are replacing what people used to do. Makes them more efficient too. So the arguments for basic income, that type of thing, makes more sense when we have more automation. Ideally, we just replace those jobs, but we'll see what happens with that. One of the things that a lot of people get confused on is, okay, cool, we have all these devices. What are they doing? What are they doing actually? Like why does this even matter? Why does moisture even matter? Why does motion sensor even matter? Well, you programming in general, when you're trying to automate something, it is very, very rare that you are directly monitoring something. Almost always, an electronic device is going to be a proxy that represents something. It's going to be an abstraction. So just like we were talking about for the lights, and the lights are not monitoring to see if a life is in the room. You're using motion. So the photons that you reflect off of with the lights that are in the room, you're tracking photons, you're tracking light. You're not necessarily even tracking motion at that point. But based on that, based on the motion, based on the photons, if there's a change in photons, more than likely there's movement. So if there's movement, you keep the lights on. If there's no movement or no change in photons, then you don't. You turn off the light. Okay, so it's a proxy for what you're trying to represent. And this is where people get confused because okay, how do you automate this thing? How do you automate that problem? How do we actually know that people are in the room with a motion sensor? Where again, it's a proxy, right? And you can do it with heat as well. People produce heat, body heat. So I mean, hey, does this room have significant delta between this point and this point? If the answer is yes, it's either a person or like a heating source. It's a programming problem that you have to get around, and part of the reason why we use motion sensors instead of heat trackers for that particular use case. Okay, so again, this is a video going over smart home devices and what you can actually do with it. Obviously, this is not incredibly out there in terms of what you can do. Custom work goes a lot farther, but in terms of devices that are on the market now, pretty good example of what's happening here. Okay, medical devices. So this is where we get into what we have currently and then what we'll have in the future. What we have currently is things like smartwatches or something that I'm playing with right here, which is a fitness tracker that's in a ring. It's called the Aura Ring, right? So this little ring here tracks heart rate and heart rate variability and body temperature and movement and sleep cycles, right? All those are automation tasks, but how do you actually measure a sleep cycle? Okay, well, more than likely it's going to be based on movement and body temperature. Okay, so there's your baselines, and then you can extrapolate from there to see what your sleep cycles are. So we have a lot of devices like that automatically track. So if you put that little clip thing on to track your heart rate in the hospital, that can be an IoT device if it's wireless and connects to the internet. It's an IoT device. Uh, one of the things that we're going to have more of for the medical field is okay, yeah, you don't actually have to come into the hospital. You just have to wear this device, and that device is going to connect to the internet. Wherever that is connecting to, we're going to have a profile on you. Based on all of that, we can determine what your problem actually is. So this is going to be helpful for people that claim to be in pain, because one of the things that's true about pain, if you're in pain, your heart rate is elevated. The same thing with body temperature. So if heart rate is elevated and your body temperature is elevated, the likelihood that you're in pain is relatively high. And then if you can match that to patient reporting, so like at 8 o'clock every night, I always have back pain. Well, if your heart rate is elevated at 8 o'clock and your body temperature is elevated at 8 o'clock, then yeah, maybe we got something there. At least we can verify that this thing is happening on a biological level. So yeah, medical devices, and then in the far future, we will have things like nanobots, or hey, we're going to have these things in your bloodstream, and that technology that's in your bloodstream is going to monitor things like glucose. And then that's going to report to the internet, or maybe a local device, and that local device is going to report to the internet. Regardless, IoT medical stuff is going to happen. It's just when. Okay. Amazon Go is a commercial example of a bunch of IoT devices with the, how do we put this? There's a bunch of things that Amazon Go has to do to automate a commercial grocery store like this with all those devices, and then reporting that to their AI server that is obviously across the internet, still counts as IoT devices. You get Amazon Go. Obviously, this is still in development, see if it can actually work. And if Amazon Go can actually get this to scale, this is going to hurt a lot of grocery stores because this is going to be far more efficient than what we do right now, which is have a bunch of people um, stock shelves and help and checkout, and there's a bunch of people in the grocery store that you actually need. And Amazon Go is attempting to automate most of that process. Okay. This is it's a TED Talk, but it was based off of studies on how people actually skim these grocery stores. Again, grocery stores are common because we have basically everyone goes to the grocery store and buys their things. However, what I want to point out here is that we can automate this today. We can easily put IoT devices, little cameras on these shelves, and we can track what you're looking at right now. We can automate all those prices right now. Those would be IoT devices. We can have digital tags. I think Kroger is playing around with that right now in terms of just automating tags and prices because it takes a long time. Same thing with inventory. Now, inventory is largely automated, but a good chunk of it's not. Mostly because people steal things and inventory doesn't always match. But if you do the Amazon Go thing, where no matter what you do, if you take the thing, it's going to show up on your inventory. That's a much better solution. Um, and I'll give you a little bit of a life example here. I used to work at Tractor Supply when COVID hit because I lost my programming job to obviously COVID. But one of the things that we had to do on a yearly basis was inventory. Okay, we're going to literally count everything that we have, all 13,000 products in the Tractor Supply store, which for a Tractor Supply store that's relatively large, uh, and that takes a couple days. So a couple days of labor, and then you have contractors, and then the organization that's behind that. That's a very expensive endeavor. So if you can automate this, if you can do the Amazon Go thing, you're saving a bunch of money just in the inventory, let alone everything else. Okay, so that wraps up IoT. Now, the key takeaways that I want for you guys to understand is that IoT is any device that connects to the internet, but for the most part, it's trying to automate something. It's trying to replace human labor, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. We just have to get to the point where we have other jobs for those people because we are increasingly moving in the direction of intellectual work where, okay, how do you automate this thing? Well, it's abstractions on abstractions. Okay, well, who handles abstractions? Well, it's people with high IQs. uh, so unfortunately, that's the world that we're heading in, but you can't solve the problem until you understand it. All right, so I think I'm going to leave you with that. That's a good place to stop. Next lecture is going to start the web portion of this curriculum. So you actually get to build and make stuff. All right, I'll see you then.